Learning Jiu Jitsu the traditional way can feel like you've been dropped into a foreign country with no phone, no map, and no translator trying to get your way home. You walk down one street, fumble your way through conversations where you understand absolutely nothing of what the person's telling you, but all you get for your troubles is confusion and exhaustion and certainly no progress. That is, until you find a map with step-by-step instructions on how to navigate your way to the closest airport and get the fuck out of there. Same is to be said for Jiu-Jitsu. You just need the right direction to follow. So in this video, I'll take you through a session framework that I use for all of my students that's generating results just like these, so you can finally start to stand out, progress much faster, and even catch up to the toughest rounds in your gym. All right, so to start, we need to set up a way that you can progress on your own skills without relying on your coach's lessons. Because if you do rely on your coach's lessons, your skill set is going to match the people that do that, and that forms the 99%, which you obviously don't want to be because you clicked on this video. My first coach was an absolute legend. He was a Polynesian guy named Severino, and all he wanted to do was coach Jiu-Jitsu. He loved it, but he was also very busy. He also had a young family. He was also trying to juggle opening 2 gyms at once, which everybody who knew anything about anything advised against. And so with all that going on, he didn't really have the time to pay attention to us as students individually, see how we were rolling, what we were doing wrong, the mistakes we kept making again and again and again and again, because he had a lot of shit to do. Now, this is no slight on him whatsoever. He was just doing the best that he could. My second coach and current coach, however, Luke, is so hyper autistic that he basically thinks about jiu-jitsu all day, every day, as well as his kids, as well as his other activities that he likes to do. But the bulk proportion is, how do I get my students as good as possible, as fast as possible? And that means instructing us based on where he thinks we need growth and development, and constantly bringing tools to the table. Hey, I saw this in a match. I think you might like this. I think that this is the way that we start to deal with this common problem that's happening at the top level. And even though that's the case, and his lessons are phenomenal, and I could just pay attention to them and still get better, sometimes it doesn't exactly fit within what I'm working in with my training sessions. So even amidst good coaching, which you guys might be very fortunate enough to have in your training room, unfortunately for most people it's not the case, but that's okay. That's why videos like this exist. You're still going to need to work on your own things in your live training rounds. You're still going to pay attention to the lesson. Even if it's one of those 3 random moves lessons, which we're going to go into next and how to deal with that, you're going to pick up little bits and pieces that you otherwise have forgot or have never seen before. So still pay attention to the lesson. But if you want to work on your weaknesses properly, don't rely on what they're teaching for the day to get you to your next level. It's never going to happen. Start to set up a structure for your training where you're going to work on your first 2 to 3 rounds in certain positions, starting from bad positions or good positions, whatever you're working on for the week, and make sure that that is your main focus. Towards the back end of the session, start to do some open rounds, play with new tools, explore a little bit. But if the bulk of your training at the very beginning of your rounds is predicated on the fact that you'll be starting in a certain position of the things that you need to work on, you A, won't have to rely on your coach's lesson to push you further forwards. Most of the time it's not going to happen. But you will be developing specific skills pertaining to what you actually need, not what's catered to everybody else. In an ideal situation, in an ideal world, I would like to think that my coach had enough time to spend time with everybody in the training room, fix their games and do all that sort of stuff, but it's just not feasible. So if you keep running into this problem, you have to work on it in your live rounds, in your own training. Which leads me into the next step, which is critical if you want to separate yourself from the herd. Insert gay lions don't travel with sheep jiu-jitsu quote. What's with that? Why do we do that in this sport? If your coach is one of those people who does just show 3 random moves, then again, it's going to be up to you to think about and figure out ways to link these moves together. When I first started private lessons with my original purple belt coach, Josh Alsop, who was a guy who was dominating the local scene, had trained over at AOJ and gone to international competitions, I thought he was Jiu-Jitsu Jesus when I first started, if I'm being completely honest. The things that he would do to me is absolutely ridiculous. He instructed me to start to write down all of the things that I knew about each position and what tools I had available in those positions. So I'd go guard passing. I know a knee cut, I know a smash pass, And then I would go into side controls. Like I know Americanas, I know Kimuras, I know all these bits and pieces. And that started to allow me to build a little bit more of a framework and an idea of what I actually had available to me when I found myself in side control, half guard, mount, north, south. Then I added an extra step on top of this. And it took me about 2 years to put this together. So it was an iterative process. Don't think that you're going to just magically happen onto a perfect map for Jiu Jitsu. You've got to play with it and tinker it and figure these things out over long periods of time. And this is why 99% of people don't fucking progress. It's because they don't put in this type of work. Now, granted, fair enough, you might just be using Jiu Jitsu for exercise, maybe a little bit of self-defense, maybe a little bit of just social ability. But if you want to get good, you clicked on this video for a reason. So if you utilize these tools and you take this matter into your own hands, you will get fucking better. I guarantee it. The extra step that I took on top of figuring out this map is how all of those pieces linked together and what I would need if I hit a successful knee cut, for instance, or if I failed a knee cut. So if my knee cut was successful, likely I would need to be punching an underhook at the same time to make sure that they couldn't wrestle up on me as soon as I glided past their legs. Because it doesn't matter how good your knee cut is, if you don't have a way to pin their upper body immediately after hitting a knee cut, you're going to get reversed. It's going to happen. Same thing for all of my submission attempts. If my submission attempt failed or wasn't quite right, I didn't have the right grip, I would start to think about what would be available as a result of it being successful or it failing. And this started to allow me to see the links between the moves, which is the most important part of the sport. Most of the people I talk to that struggle have no idea what the transitions are between the main positions and the main submissions. So that when you attempt something, it's black and white. It either works and you get a submission or you get a pass, or it doesn't work and you immediately enter that blank brain feeling where you hesitate, you stall, and your training partner quickly moves and then they're around you and you're left there sitting confused and fucking exhausted. So as you're developing your weaknesses and you're figuring out what your strengths are, try to the best of your ability, if you have to research, if you have to hire a coach, if you have to do any of those things, link below, to figure out what would happen if my move was successful. And this is going to get your brain thinking a lot more. If you can do this, you'll start to exhaust your mind more in training than you do your body. And that's when you really start to understand what Jiu Jitsu is about. And you start to go from being in the 99% to the 1%. Because let's be honest, even if people have a black belt, they've been training for 10 years, most of them don't fucking understand the sport. They know what they're good at, they know what they're bad at, and they stick to what they're good at, and they never evolve. You guys have these people in your gym all the time. You know who I'm talking about. Which leads me into the final part of becoming a 1% grappler. It's actually a little bit counterintuitive, but I guarantee you, if you start doing this, your skill development will skyrocket and you'll be leading on the mats instead of just surviving with everybody else. I'm sure you've trained with somebody that just wants to keep running away. After ADCC 2024, me and the missus decided to go to Miami. We were going to go to Miami and New York, but that flight was just miserable coming home from New York. So we decided to skip New York and just go to Miami. And I was training at a pretty well-known gym with a very, very high-level guy. And I started to notice that throughout the round, as soon as I made an advancement, he would just run away from me. Now, this may just be him trying to figure me out, but basically at the end of the round, I just started to think, what a fucking waste of time that was. Like, would you not rather gain connection, get swept, and have something to work on in your next session than just completely avoid all contact altogether? And so when I thought about this heavily, I was like, well, why do people just stick to the things that they know are going to work and the things that they know they're good at? Well, because it validates their idea of whether they're good or bad at the sport. But the problem is that keeps you stuck because you keep using the same tools over and over and over again. So a methodology that I've started to develop is taking all of my favorite tools off the table at least one session per week. Now, this is really important. I've done it in my training sessions as I've come back from being sick. I am very proficient at lower leg shift, and I've been using it since basically I learned it. I really enjoy the position. I like wrestling up from there. I like sweeping. I like coming up. I like coming up into dogfights and body locks and all those sorts of things. But I've recognized that my dependency on using that has negated my butterfly half game. And so for the last couple of weeks in training, every time a lower leg shift opportunity presents itself, I've taken a step back, taken that off the table, and then put butterfly half back in the mix. Not only have my sessions been thoroughly enjoyable, but I've been using tools that I haven't been using in ages. I've been hitting more sumigeshis, I've been hitting more kanibasamis, I've been getting into the legs a lot more, and it's just opened up this opportunity for me to continue to work on different areas of my game and challenge myself for unique and creative ways to get to positions that I wasn't usually using in my day-to-day training. And so if you let fear dictate your training sessions, because you absolutely don't want to get to bottom position, or you're terrified of getting swept or submitted for some sort of ego problem that it would invalidate your training, and then you're suddenly you're bad at the sport because you get submitted or swept. It's just fucking stupid. But if you do have that idea because you've been taught in the traditional way, then you're probably going to stay stuck in the 99%, because that's how most people roll. They want to feel good, and feeling good in their eyes doesn't mean progress. It means submitting people and not getting submitted. So they create these tiny little games with heaps of hesitation and heaps of resistance and don't really get anywhere. But if you start to take tools off the table, you'll start to recognize that you can flow seamlessly between positions that you weren't usually using, and that they're not that scary. That you can actually not only just survive, but thrive in these spots. So if you start to implement that into your training, I guarantee you'll find creative ways to start to bring in tools and things and pieces that you haven't been using, and you'll find that your sessions are 10 times more enjoyable. And if you do this for long enough, you'll build confidence in every area. You'll allow blue belts to get a fully extended armbar knowing that you've put in the reps of dealing with late stage armbar escapes. So you won't be terrified when you're passing guard about extending your elbows. I'm not saying give blue belts armbars on purpose, just for the fuck of it, but I'm saying if they do a good job and they've got a nice armbar from close guard, you've now got the skills and the confidence to be able to defend it correctly without hurting yourself and without getting stuck in a position and having to tap immediately because you've never been there and you've hesitated your entire training session. So take tools off the table, don't hesitate, go into each and every single position, and you'll start to develop confidence everywhere. So now you know exactly what it takes to rise to the top of your training room and start to get towards the 1% instead of being stuck in the 99%. You'll need to make sure you aren't falling for these 7 progress killers that will keep you in a plateau and ruin your skill development. If you want to know exactly what they are and how to avoid them, click here and I'll take you through it step by step.